All right, good afternoon. It's 1:25, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. And we'll begin with the roll call of our commissioners. Commissioner Blakely is here. Commissioner Fair. Commissioner Ponce. Great. And Commissioner Rubin. Present, and I'm here, and we have quorum. I'd like to begin with requesting a motion to approve the minutes from our January 8th, 2026 meeting. So moved by Commissioner Fair. Have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Blakely. And we'll just do a quick roll call. Commissioner Rubin is a yes, and Commissioner Ponce is a yes, and I am a yes, and the motion carries unanimously. The minutes will be posted on the commission's website. There are 5 projects on the agenda for today's meeting. Staff to the commission will present the project on the agenda and state their recommendation. Following the staff presentation, the committee will have the opportunity to ask questions of the staff. The applicant may then make their statement. Following the applicant's statements, members of the public may make their statements. I'd like to ask anyone other than the applicant wishing to make a statement on today's on an item on today's agenda to complete a public comment card and give the card to a member of the staff. Comment cards are available at the door. As a courtesy to other individuals wishing to offer comments, we ask that members of the general public limit your statements to 3 minutes or less. When the time comes for public comment on the item on the agenda, I will call the names from the cards and ask you to make your statement. Please state your name, your interest, organization, or company you represent, if any. Our first project for today is 1926 North Halsted in the 43rd Ward. Alderman Knudsen, the proposed Roger Brown home and studio. This is the proposed conversion of the 2-story studio and gallery building to residential use, including placement of the outer width of non-historic brick at the parapet, replacement of the exterior stair at the front elevation, a new roof deck with stair access, and interior work. And I'd like to call on Tyler Taylor for the staff report.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon. We're kicking this PRC meeting off with the Roger Brown home and studio. It is a 2-story brick building located mid-block on the west side of North Halsted between Armitage Ave to the north and Wisconsin Ave to the south. It was the home and studio of prominent Chicago artist Roger Brown, who lived and worked in the building along with his partner George Veranda from 1974 to 1996. After that, Brown donated the building as well as his collection of art housed within it to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. The school continued to use both the building and the art collection for education until 2025. A prospective buyer, Lakeview Properties, intends to purchase the building and convert it to residential use, which will require some minor alterations. The building was built as a store and flat in 1888 with a commercial storefront at the front and the first floor level and dwelling units at the rear and second story. It originally had a pressed metal cornice that was removed at some point, and the parapet behind it was parged over prior to when Brown and Veranda bought the building in 1974. A preliminary landmark recommendation for the building was approved by the Commission at the October 2025 meeting, with the significant features preliminarily identified as all elevations and roof lines visible from the public way and the historic Daily News sign painted on the north elevation. After Brown's tenure, the parge coat at the parapet was later replaced with red face brick, but the brick does not match the original red brick that clad the rest of the facade, as shown in the photos at left. The outer width of the parapet is proposed to be replaced with new brick matching the original as shown in the close-up to the right, with a simple 4-inch limestone cap. The width of brick to be removed was added after the period of significance, and staff recommend replacing it will not be an adverse effect. The new brick should match the original brick, shown at right as close as possible in size, shape, color, texture, and mortar joint profile, size, color. Size, profile, and color. A sample of the proposed brick should be provided for review by staff when a permit application is submitted. To provide more habitable space in the basement as part of the residential conversion, a portion of the first floor structure is proposed to be raised by 2 feet, as shown in the section to the right. A pair of doors recessed in the center of the storefront provide access to the main first floor space. The raised portion of the floor is set back from the main entrance and storefront so that the storefront will not be affected. Another single leaf door at the north corner provides access to a stair that at one point served the second floor flats identified in the red outline. The first floor interior alterations will allow the stair to be open to the first floor space. The exterior stair door is proposed to be removed and replaced with a fixed panel, with a glass light and overall proportions similar to the existing doors at the center entrance. The proposed panel shown in the elevation at right and the transom window above, is shown at the elevation and the transom window above would remain unchanged. Staff recommend replacement of the door with a fixed panel will not remove any decorative features or craftsmanship important to the period of significance, and the design of the proposed panel will preserve a record that the opening was originally for a door, even if it's no longer operable. In addition to the changes to the front facade, a new roof deck is proposed with an access stair, and new masonry openings are proposed at the side elevations. Due to the narrow side yards and the height of the adjacent buildings, these changes will not be visible from the public way. Staff recommend approval of the project as shown on the drawings dated 1/29/26, with the condition for review of the new brick at the parapet as mentioned earlier. Alderman Knudsen has reviewed the proposal and has no objection. The architect, Samuel Pavlovchek, and a representative for the owner, Alex Holt, I believe, are present and available to answer your questions.
Great. Thank you, Tyler. Commissioners, any questions for Tyler prior to hearing from the architect? Oh, Commissioner Fair.
Tyler, I think I heard you say it, but just wanted to confirm it for the new roof access for that pop-up. Is that's hidden from view by the adjacent building?
Yeah, and it's just limited to access to the roof, so even if it was visible, policy would allow it, but it's basically everything behind that forward chimney is not visible.
Okay.
And we've confirmed that.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, commissioners? And Commissioner Rubin.
Sure, that's fine. Hi. I think you mentioned I don't know if you mentioned the cornice. I noticed the building next door to it had a nice little cornice on it. Did this originally have one on the parapet?
Yeah, so it had a pressed metal cornice that was removed before, and the area behind it was parged over before Roger Brown bought the building. And there's anecdotally he wanted to bring it back, but there's a couple of options here. If a cornice were to come back, we would approve that as well.
Got it.
But replacing the very clearly like poorly matching brick is still
The number
yeah.
one thing to address. Okay,
exactly.
sounds good. Thank you.
Question. Good question. Any other questions? If there are none, let's hear from the project architect if they're here.
Hi, good afternoon. Samuel Pavlovchik from Pavlovchik Architecture. I think the case was really provided in full. We were really trying to limit the amount of features that were changed in the building while still utilizing the best space within. The roof deck and access, again, were intentionally designed to be pulled back. Even the roof deck itself does not extend all the way to the front parapet wall, so it's held back. So we don't need to worry about any new increase in height to the parapets. Same thing with the residential first floor and the mention about raising up that floor to better utilize the basement space. We pulled that first floor in at the existing floor level so the entire existing front facade can remain while still making it usable space in the front and then being able to further utilize the basement below. Otherwise, I think everything else was pretty well covered.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the architect? I know that there's representatives from the ownership that would like to say a few words.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alexandra Holt from the School of the Art Institute and appreciate your time today. As was noted, the School of the Art Institute has owned this building for some time and determined that the collection that was the Roger Brown collection was better cared for elsewhere and also would allow for greater access. And it's currently being held by the Kohler Museum that specializes in artist collections. We're really pleased to have a potential buyer who is interested in restoring and renovating the space and putting it back to productive reuse. So we appreciate your consideration of these plans. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you for being here and thank you for your statement. Commissioners, any questions? None. Thank you so much. There are two folks that have signed up to speak on this. Kendra Parzan.
Thank you. I'm Kendra Parzan. I am the Chicago Area Advocacy Manager for Landmarks Illinois. Landmarks Illinois strongly supports this building becoming a City of Chicago landmark. And if these changes enable that process to proceed, then we offer no objection. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Ward Miller?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Ward Miller, Richard H. Treehouse, Executive Director of Preservation Chicago. We at Preservation Chicago wish to support the change of brick at the roof line of the Roger Brown Home and Studio. Here we also, as Kendra just mentioned, very much support the Chicago landmark designation of this building. It's a very important building by a very important artist. I just wanted to share with you that there were several people that were involved in the Roger Brown Studio, in addition to Frederick Siebold in 1888 and George Verona, if you will, Mr. Brown's partner. I also learned recently that John Vinci did some work with Roger Brown on planning the renovation of the house. Floor plans and whatnot were prepared and then taken over by George Verona. So I just wanted to mention that. And of course, now we have a new entity that's coming into play here and restoring this building on its exterior. And we're very proud to support that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Miller. No one else decided to speak on this item, so we'll close public comment and open up final discussion by our commission. Seeing none, I'd like to request a motion to adopt the staff recommendations for the project. So moved by Commissioner Rubin, seconded by Commissioner Fair. Commissioner Blakely? Yes. Commissioner Ponce is a yes, and I'm a yes, and the motion carries unanimously. Best of luck. Okay. We are moving to item number 2, which is 3659 North Springfield in the 30th Ward, Alderman Cruz's ward, in the Villa District. The proposed in-kind reconstruction of deteriorated non-historic front porch and solid stucco fence. I'd like to call on Joyce Ramos for the report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject property includes a prairie-style main house and is located on a corner block at Springfield and Waveland Avenues. The current two-car garage was reviewed and conditionally approved by the Permit Review Committee in 2021. The applicant has applied for a permit to remove and replace the front stair, porch, and wing walls and the 4 feet 6 inch high garden fence along the sidewalk. They are made of wood frame construction. The deck and stairs are finished in wood decking. The walls are covered in beige cement stucco with dark brown stained wood trim. The deck is rectangular in plan with narrow stairs that go down to grade, and these elements have been designed and constructed in the same materials and architectural styles of the main house. So according to the architect, the existing decking and framing support is rotted and supported on inadequate foundations. The wall sections are damaged and have settled unevenly, causing chronic cracking, especially where they join the stucco walls of the residence, thus allowing water to damage both the deck and the house. The architect did consider just repairing the deck and stairs. However, in their opinion, these problems would just continue and the settling issues would continue to persist. Replacement would be required to install the new adequate concrete foundations below and constructed with joints that allow for differential settlement. In order to determine when the stair and fence were installed, staff researched documentary evidence of the property. The Sanborn Fire Insurance map from 1949, shown at right, shows a shallow porch and diagonal stair, which are parallel to the angled entry. Historic photos with an unknown date but likely taken prior to 1975 based on the style of the street signs shows the diagonal stairs. In the 1975 photo, the stucco garden fence does not appear to exist, but the diagonal stairs do. A photo taken in 1978 still shows the angled porch, and all the photos that are mentioned, which are on that top row, were taken prior to the Villa District designation in 1983. The Chicago Historic Resources Survey card has photos that were taken in 1997 and 2007, showing the current stair configuration and stucco garden fence. Staff was not able to locate permit records or other documentary evidence between 1978 and 1997 to determine when the stair was changed or when the fence was installed. Therefore, there is a chance that the current stair and fence were constructed after the district designation. The architect documented the existing conditions of the stair and fence as shown on the permit drawings, and the proposed replacement will match the existing in design, size, materials, and location. The design and materials of the current stair and fence, while not original to the house, are consistent with the prairie-style main house. Staff recommend that the proposed removal of the existing non-historic stair and fence and replacement in kind will not have an adverse effect on the property or district as a whole. The design, size, location, and materials of the proposed new stair and fence are compatible with the architectural features of the main house, and staff recommends approval. Staff recommend that the color and texture of the stucco on the new stair and fence should be compatible with the stucco of the main house. The Alderman and Community Group have reviewed the project and have no objections. The architect is also here, so if you have any questions, please let us know. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Joyce. Commissioners, any questions for Joyce before we hear from the project team? Yep, Commissioner Fair.
Just a question about that stucco, which I imagine that's going to be kind of tricky to get a good match, but I noticed match is not used. Compatible is the word that's used in that criteria. Does that give some room for some variation?
Yeah, I mean, we just want to make sure that you can get it as close as possible.
Very good question, clarification. Any other questions? Seeing none, let's hear from the project team. The project architect, I believe, is here, Jerry McManus.
Good afternoon, Jerry McManus, Lineworks Limited Architects, the architect for this project. I think the presentation was pretty comprehensive. There is one item I would like to point out. As best we can tell from the survey, that four-segmented garden wall or fence, whatever you want to call it, appears to be built either on or over the side property line. So bringing that down, the replacement, of course, would actually be built within the property line. I noticed there was a sentence in there about maintaining the same location. And I just want to differentiate there that we would be making a change there. Otherwise, the owner's desire is to, restore exactly what's there. It's the way they bought the home 6.5 years ago, and they'd like to make use of both the fence and the deck and the enclosing walls. And they're perfectly happy to make it, as compatible and matching to the existing residents. That's very important to them too. But the fact is that outdoor elements like that suffer in the weather and do need to be repaired or replaced every so often. So that's what we're hoping to do today.
Great. Thank you. Any comments on the location?
I think that's fine. It's as close as I can be.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. There's no one to sign up to speak on this item. So I'd like to, if there are any final points, questions, commissioners, I'd like to ask those, see if there are any, and I don't see that there are any. So with that, I'd like to request a motion to adopt the staff recommendation. So moved by Commissioner Ponce, seconded by Commissioner Blakely. Commissioner Fair is a yes. Commissioner Rubin is a yes. I'm a yes, and the motion carries unanimously. Congratulations and very nice presentation.
Thank you.
Our third project today is 834 West Chalmers in the 43rd Ward again. Alderman Knudsen, McCormick Row House District. It's the proposed new rear open metal 20-foot wide by 10-foot 2 long pergola at existing rear masonry terrace. And Emily Barton has the presentation.
Yes, thank you. So you may recognize this area from today's earlier preliminary designation. The district primarily contains row houses, which were built to provide rental income for the McCormick Theological Seminary, which was located in this vicinity from 1863 to 1975. Designed in a simplified Queen Anne style with a private street and park in the center of the development, these houses are a fine example of late 19th century residential architecture and planning. The subject property is a 2.5-story detached single-family home at the east end of Chalmers Place and was constructed in 1889 as a professor's residence. The property is on a corner lot with the south primary elevation fronting on Chalmers and the east elevation on a private drive. Because of the way that it's laid out, you can see it a little bit also from Fullerton. So, a 1-story rear addition and expansion of a rear masonry terrace were reviewed and approved by the committee in 2013. The current proposal is to add a pergola onto this terrace. No changes are proposed for the front elevation. The previously approved addition is set back approximately 43.5 feet from the front facade of the house and roughly 2 feet behind the east facade of the home. There's an existing low masonry terrace at the rear of the building, which was expanded eastward when the addition was built. So now the applicants plan to add an open metal pergola onto the terrace, approximately 20 feet wide by 10 feet long. So the new pergola will primarily attach to the non-historic rear addition, just below the eaves of the roof and the masonry terrace. It's proposed to be 10 feet tall from the patio and 12 feet 2 inches tall from grade and made of a pre-finished aluminum in a dark color. This pergola does not detract from the historic character of the property or district and will not damage or obscure any historic material or significant historic features. And because of that, staff recommend approval as proposed. A letter of support from the Seminary Townhouse Association was also included in your packet, and I believe we have the homeowner here, Ned, if you have any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Emily. Any questions for Emily? Commissioners, seeing none, if the homeowner would like to make a statement? Welcome.
I'm Ned Villers. We've owned the home since 2013 and lived there since 2010. For those of you who know our community, it's its own landmarked and strict process that we have to go through to do anything. And in this case, we've done that, and everyone is supportive and has no issues with it. So we hope you'll see the same. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Commissioners, any questions? Discussion? Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your collaboration with the staff. And with that, no one has time to speak on this item. So I'd like to give a moment for any final discussion. Seeing none, if there's no further discussion, I'd like to request a motion to adopt the staff recommendation. So moved by Commissioner Fair, seconded by Commissioner Blakely. Commissioner Rubin is a yes. Commissioner Ponce is a yes. I'm a yes. The motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. Our fourth project today is 1107 West Fulton Market in the 27th Ward, Alderman Burnett, Fulton Randolph Market District. It's the proposed construction of a new facade of a 4-story non-contributing building with a 3-story addition, including a penthouse. And Joyce Ramos has the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The building is located mid-block on Fulton between May and Aberdeen Streets. The Fulton Randolph Market District, designated in 2015, conveys Chicago's importance as a wholesale market and meatpacking area that includes a significant number of manufacturing, warehouse, and meatpacking buildings that exemplify the importance of industry to the city's economic development. The majority of the buildings were designed with a utilitarian aesthetic that placed priority on functionality, sturdy construction, minimal wasted space or material, and clearly expressed structure with the use of large windows, vertical piers, thick masonry walls, and limited architectural ornamentation. The subject building is located adjacent to 2 to 3-story buildings. The front facade was demolished prior to the initiation of landmark designation of the district. Since the existing building has lost its historic facade and no longer conveys the historic and architectural character of the district, the subject property was identified as non-contributing. The proposed changes therefore should be reviewed pursuant to the criteria for new construction, additions, and alterations to non-contributing buildings and the Fulton Randolph Market District design guidelines. Facade replacement projects were reviewed by the committee 3 times before in 2015, 2016, and 2022, but none of the work moved forward. The 2015 proposal was a 4-story building with 2 bays and an overall building height of 49 feet. The 2016 proposal was for a 5-story building, also with 2 bays, but an overall building height of 70 feet 5 inches, but was conditionally approved to be set back, the fifth floor to be set back so the massing and scale of the building is more compatible with the historic context of the district. The most recent PRC-approved proposal in 2022 was for a 4-story building with 3 bays and no additions, shown at left. Historic preservation staff reviewed and approved the permit drawings in December 2022. However, that permit has since been voided. Sometime between 2022 and 2025, a structural steel frame was constructed on the front facade, which includes 2 columns on each side and 1 center column. This 2-bay layout does not match the 3-bay layout that was approved for permit. Historic preservation staff reviewed permit drawings for this project in July of 2025 and issued corrections recommending how to revise the design to meet the Commission's criteria for new construction and the Fulton Randolph Market District design guidelines. In December, the drawings were resubmitted to Landmarks for review. Historic preservation staff issued corrections reiterating the same comments from the last review cycle and also noted that since design is significantly different from what was previously approved by the PRC, that would need to be reviewed again at a future meeting. Since then, staff has been in contact with the property owner who has ultimately decided to present his project as proposed with no change to the committee for review and decision. The current proposal is a 4-story building with a 3-story addition. The building height from grade to top of parapet of the principal facade is approximately 52 feet. The overall building height from grade to the top of the penthouse roof is 94 feet and 104 feet to the penthouse machine room. The proposed floor-to-floor heights are 15 feet 9 inches for the first floor and 12 feet for the second, third, and fourth floors. The front facade is proposed to incorporate 2 bays with 16-foot 4-inch wide by 9-foot 4-inch tall windows on floors 2 through 4, with a narrow masonry pier in between. The new windows are proposed to be divided light steel windows with operable awnings. The scale of the window openings is larger than what is found in the historic buildings in the district, and staff recommend reducing the size of the window openings to be more compatible. This could be accomplished by raising the sills and widening the vertical masonry piers. Alternatively, the front facade could be divided into 3 bays as previously approved by the PRC. The first floor storefronts include black aluminum framed display windows with a transom and a recessed entry. Given the Fulton Randolph Market District design guidelines and neighboring context, staff recommends that the storefronts incorporate a bulkhead that is between 18 to 24 inches high. Staff further recommend that the door and window details be provided with the permit plans. The applicant has proposed a brick facade with limestone trim for the first 4 floors. While the final brick selection has not been made, the brick is proposed to be red in tone. Staff recommends that all masonry and mortar samples be submitted for staff review and approval prior to the permit submittal and shall be compatible with the existing masonry colors and textures found within the district. The 3-story addition includes 2 stories set back 11 feet from the front facade and a penthouse set back 27 feet to the elevator enclosure and 48 feet to the interior amenity space. The proposed floor-to-floor height is 15 feet 9 inches for the 5th floor and 16 feet 6 inches for the 6th floor. The penthouse floor-to-floor height is 10 feet. The roof above the 6th floor extends to the front property line, supported by exposed steel framing with projecting balconies. The roof deck of the penthouse shows a visible guardrail at the roof perimeter. The Fulton Randolph Market District design guidelines provide flexibility to allow to add space through rooftop additions. Buildings that are 4 stories or greater may have a 2-story rooftop addition constructed. provided that they are set back from the primary facades along Fulton a minimum of 20 feet. These setbacks are intended to maintain the scale of the immediate context and overall district. The height of the individual floors of the rooftop addition should be compatible with the floor heights of the existing building and adjacent historic context. To support the proposed building height, the applicant provided several addresses and their estimated heights of taller buildings within the district, which were all included in the packet for your review. In summary, a number of these properties are located on larger sites that are not comparable to the subject property. There are several properties that are of a similar context to the subject property, such as 1106 West Fulton, which is a new construction project that was approved to be 5 stories high at 66 feet high by the PRC in 2019, which is located mid-block with a 50-foot street frontage and located directly across the street from the subject property, which is the most relevant in context. 215 North Aberdeen is a 5-story contributing building at 77 feet high, located mid-block, located about a block away from the subject property. 1114 West Fulton is a 4-story contributing building at 51 feet high, located mid-block. And 312 North May is a 6-story contributing historic building at 88 feet high that fills half of the block, located about a block away from the subject property. The new construction examples provided were approved by PRC but have different contexts than the subject property, as they have a larger footprint and are located on a corner lot and not compatible to the subject building. And that includes 1045 West Fulton, which was approved to be 12 stories high at 138 feet by the PRC in 2019 and was part of a larger development that filled half of the block. 210 North Aberdeen was approved to be 19 stories high at 239 feet, which was approved by the PRC in 2021. And this project was part of a larger development that is partially located outside of the district boundaries, and the portion of the building that is within the district is set back behind the historic building. The last example that was provided by the applicant is 1118 West Fulton, which is a 5-story building at 71 feet high, located at the corner of Fulton and May Streets. However, this is a non-contributing building, so we cannot take that one into consideration. So taking all this into account, the scale of the immediate historic context of the contributing buildings is important to maintain. The proposed floor-to-floor heights of the addition, which are taller than the other floor-to-floor heights on the building, and context, the setback of the 3-story addition, which is not consistent with the district guidelines, the open structure and projecting balconies proposed at the 5th and 6th floors, which are not characteristic of the district, as well as masonry opening sizes proposed on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors of the primary facade, are not compatible with the historic character of the district. Staff recommend that there are options that address these issues, such as a 4-story building with a 2-story addition set back a minimum of 20 feet from the front facade and individual floor heights compatible with the floor heights of the adjacent historic context, or a 5-story building that does not exceed 66 feet in height with a 2-story addition set back a minimum of 20 feet from the front facade and individual floor heights compatible with the floor heights of the adjacent historic context. And these proposed options would provide the number of stories in the building height that are compatible with the immediately adjacent context and would be in keeping with the historic and new construction examples provided that are similar in scale and siting with the subject property. The front elevation of the 5th and 6th floors is proposed to be fully glazed with side elevations clad with metal panels. And staff recommend that any of the cladding materials on the rooftop incorporate the color of the window frames and metal panels be a dark neutral color and a matte finish that recedes into the background. The proposed open structure, including balconies on the primary facade on the 5th and 6th floors, is not compatible with the historic character of the district. To be more in keeping with the historic buildings in the district, each floor should be flush with the front facade and designed with appropriate proportions of solid to void arrangement of windows and comparable materials. Projecting balconies and the exposed steel structure should be eliminated from the front facade. Staff also recommend that the guardrail on the roof deck should be set back behind the perimeter and constructed out of glass to minimize its visibility from the public right-of-way. And that setback distance should be determined through visibility studies with views taken from several vantage points along the street level. Okay. So staff recommend that the committee advise the applicant that the project as proposed include the floor-to-floor heights of the addition setback of the 3-story addition, the open structure and projecting balconies proposed at the 5th and 6th floors, as well as masonry opening sizes proposed on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors of the primary facade are not compatible with the historic character of the district. So I've kind of mentioned the different options that the property owner could take in order to get this to be compliant with the design guidelines. So basically, the alderman has also reviewed the project, is currently proposed, and a letter of support was included in the packet. The property owner also had just recently submitted an update to the information that he had provided in the packet, which I think Deanna had just distributed out for your review. The applicant is also here, and they'd also like to make a statement. So after that, please let us know if there's any other questions.
All right. Well, thank you, Joyce. Before we go to the applicant, are there any questions for Joyce? Commissioner Fair.
Just a clarification, for that recommendation 1B, the 5-story option, is that 66-foot height, is that including of the penthouse height? That's the overall structure, everything, or that's really the main, building?
It's like the main,
Perfect. Thank
The
you.
main,
the primary facade that's along the street.
Exactly.
the property
The
line.
brick portion?
Yes. Mhm.
Thank you. I had a question for Joyce. Can you clarify it's new construction of a facade. It was an existing non-contributing building.
Yeah.
So it's not a new building, but it's, right? It's not a,
It was a building that lost its facade and because of that loss became a non-contributing building.
ah, okay.
So technically, the owner could work with what remains of the structure or could apply for a full demolition of what remains and build new. So far, there has been proposals that Joyce presented were or identified and previously presented to committee included retaining portions of what remains, constructing a new facade, and then other additions. So it's really a choice that they could make.
Okay. Yeah, so they technically, this kind of should be reviewed as a new building almost.
Right.
Right, okay. Any other questions? No? Okay. Seeing none, I think we should, I'd like to hear from the property owner and your team. You introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm John Haig, the architect. I'm here with Nick, and Eamon's here as well. I don't know if he'll speak as the owner, but I'm gonna just kind of present where we came up with the design, and then Nick can fill in some of the blanks. But I think just to start out what you were just talking about, I think it's important to understand. We looked at this building since it's such a significant renovation and the whole facade's coming down, that we looked at it as a new construction and the guidelines of new construction. That being said, the whole, could you go back to like one of the renderings? Just, it's easier for me to talk about it looking at it. Thanks. So the idea was, the concept was to reinforce the street line, with the masonry. And we did have a different building in there, to be honest. We didn't have punched openings. We had steel frame that was exposed, and we worked with Joyce and Emily to try to, change it a little bit to be more conforming to the street. So the idea is, and you could kind of see that it emphasizes the parapet line across the street of West Fulton. And the idea was with the steel that it minimizes, the design and it kind of retracts back. And if you look at there's 4 steel columns going up that are, maybe 12, 14 inches wide. So it's a very minimal structure on there. It does get reinforced, as Joyce said, with the balconies and kind of that top parapet. And we would obviously work with the, as one of the comments was about the railing on the top, that we'd make that disappear. Similar to what we did on the 4th floor, or the fifth floor, I should say, that parapet acts as a railing in there. So the floor is a little deeper in there. And that hence is why we kind of came up with, some of those larger floor to floor heights in there. And as well as the sixth floor, floor to floor height, that is because there's some structures on the roof that we needed about 4 feet deep. So while it might come off as 15.9, the real dimension inside is 12 feet, which is very typical in that district. So I think that kind of follows the design. I'll just go through a little bit of response on the comments. And, our goal really was to just fill in this the site with a modern interpretation of, the Fulton District kind of industrial building. And so those large windows, those 2 bays, we did look at a 3-bay system, but it actually reinforces the kind of a verticality of the building as opposed of a horizontal. And then, additionally, there are no 3-bay windows in that block. All the buildings on both sides have 2-bay design elements. And the same thing with the bulkhead. There's one building on that block that has a base. We do have 2 anchored limestone bases that the brick details down into. But I think the only other building that has a bulkhead at the base is 1117, and it's a 3 courses of brick and a like a 2.5-inch cap on it. So those were kind of the elements that we looked at out there. The setback, we looked at this as a volunteer setback at 11 feet to reinforce the facade and then push the mass of the building back and lighten it up with glass and steel. The idea of the 20 feet, I think, comes into play if it's not a new construction. At least that's the way we read into it. So that's why we didn't entertain any pushing that facade back any further. Another issue with that is the footprint's 40 by 100. So at that point, you start to, with the elevators, the stairs, you start to lose a lot of area up on those 2 floors. In context to the surrounding buildings, the heights vary from, I think as she said, it was 70 to 200 feet. I think an important block, and we threw it in at the end, I apologize for the late submittal, but the 318 North Carpenter is a relatively newer building. And that block has buildings on it that are 30 feet, that are 2 stories or 2.5 stories to 4-story buildings. So it goes from 30 feet to 40 feet to 47 feet. And it's adjacent to 318 Carpenter, which is an 8-story building that is 80 feet at the street level, and it's 104 at the top level. And that has 2 step backs that look like they maybe are 14 feet and then 5 feet back off of the street. I think I touched on all the railings. The materials we would obviously, it's a lighter gray metal. That's what we were looking to incorporate. We do have a Glengarry brick picked out that's very similar to red brick, and with the light mortar color is what we'd be proposing to, not to identically match, but just be slightly off. I think it's important to have a little differentiation between the materials on that facade to show that it still is a new building, give respect back to the existing other buildings on Fulton. I think that's Nick.
Good afternoon. My name is Nick Fatikas. I'm one of the attorneys working with the property owner on the project. I know and appreciate that this is not a zoning hearing, but I did want to point out we did work through a type 1 zoning change application with the alderman and the local community to get to this point. It was a type 1 zoning change. I think that's really important because that was the design that we presented to city council, to the community, to the alderman, to even be, to get to this point. The DX7 zoning actually allows, I believe, up to between 135 and 155 feet of building height, obviously being respectful of the Fulton district. We are not proposing a height anywhere near that. We're staying at the 7-story, including that penthouse. So I think that that's an important detail. And as John touched on, but I'm going to kind of reiterate, the optionality for pushing the building or pushing the addition of the building further back is limited because we only have 100 feet of lot depth to work with. We're 25 feet shorter than a standard city lot. So from a practical perspective, it's difficult to push that feature back and then still keep it viable and functional for the end uses, those residential units above grade. I'm happy to answer any questions about the zoning side. I appreciate again the opportunity to speak. And without putting them on the spot, I defer to the alderman to kind of close our presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Unless there's questions.
Not yet. Go ahead.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to meet all of you in person. It's my first Landmark Commission, so appreciate the work that you do. I've lived in this neighborhood, walked these streets all the time. This building has unfortunately been pretty dilapidated for a very long time. And I think the context really matters. You know, the facade was falling apart, and this building is a non-contributing building, but it is adjacent to two contributing buildings. And in order for them to restore it in any capacity, they would either have to demolish it as of right, which would put the other buildings at risk, or figure out a solution. And I appreciate their effort. We went through the community process. The community was supportive of what they put together. But we're just at a stage where, because of how long this has been an issue property, something has to move forward with either what they're doing, or we're going to have to put a demolition order on it. And so we're going to put other things in risk because of the amount of time and the continued safety risk that are being presented on what is becoming a key area for people to walk around. So that's really my contribution here. The community is supportive. We don't want to run the risk of continued public safety issues or community safety issues. And the broader approach, if this wasn't, if this was a completely new build, I know this would be a completely different process. So just want to keep it in mind that they are trying to maintain the bones of an old structure in a scenario where they don't necessarily have to. So thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Okay, commissioners, any questions? The architect's statements? Yes, Deanna.
Thank you. Nick, I was just hoping that I could ask a question maybe of you or the architect. So the Aberdeen building that was mentioned, so it does have, obviously that went through this process and it was reviewed by the committee and approved. And it does incorporate some recessed balcony situation, or if you want to call it that. But what it also accomplished is maintaining the street wall presence with solid corners, with a portion of the building that also incorporated the more of an open metal, but at a proportion of floor heights and heights that work. So we are not, I don't think that staff recommendations were intended to force a setback. We're just saying that there are options where you could hold the street wall at a taller height as well. So if we're not talking about setting it back 20 feet, is there an option where you're just designing your front facade that has that addresses those issues that are just getting closer to maintaining the street wall and the character of proportion that we're discussing?
No, I think I understand. I am going to defer to John, but I think briefly, the point that I think we're trying to make is we don't want our facade, the 4-story portion of the facade, to stand out in too much difference from the two neighboring buildings because they're a little bit shorter. So maintaining the red masonry facade at that component, keeping it at a 4-story height. I believe the base is a concrete base that's going to remain. So there are portions of the existing structure that remain that kind of set the next piece in motion because we are keeping that first floor component as well as both side walls. So it's really trying to finish that out and kind of preserve that in the context of the two neighboring properties. If we had taller neighboring buildings, maybe height that we're talking about today wouldn't be as significant an issue, and we would have more availability to go higher. I think it was just more our intent, and I'll defer to John, to keep the massing at the street with the masonry component consistent with the three-story buildings on either side. John, if I missed anything.
Yeah, I mean, we did look at that idea, and I know we've had, you know, quite a few different reiterations of this project. And, you know, in the end, to us, it feels like that's a better solution than actually reinforcing that wall up another, you know, 10 or 12 feet. You know, you could kind of just see what it is in that view. You know, if you're up another story, then you're up at those balconies. And you know, we put the balconies in there to try to relieve once again, it was just going to be structural steel in there without balconies. But it actually, when you kind of put a plane in there, it stops your eye from, you know, keep going up, you know, even higher. And the perception is even higher. So that's where we are with it. I just don't know if the functionality of it all works, if it's 5 stories and then it kicks back 20 feet on that floor. And like I mentioned before, we went off of the you know, the new construction kind of guidelines and the aesthetic from, you know, it's a 6-story or 7-story building that could potentially, I guess, just be a straight wall on both. But we were trying to be respectful to that because, you know, Eamon's had this building for a long time, so and he knows his neighbors, so.
Commissioner Fair?
I'll try my best to kind of wade through this one because it's a lot. And I think, you know, the Landmarks Office have tried to offer a couple of options out on this. You know, right now, it's kind of hard to buy the 2 upper floors. You know, the argument that it's, you know, kind of not making this full massing for the entire, you know, 6 stories of the building, I really disagree with when I look at that. I think, you know, inevitably those balconies, those read as solid planes.
Solid.
And I think, you know, when you look at some of the example buildings that we saw, you know, when we talk about making the corners solid, that starts to jive a little bit more with what you see in the Fulton Market area. This is different. So I would say if it's not, you know, kind of building up those walls to at least be more consistent, you know, with other areas, is it a removal of, you know, kind of that entire, what is that, the 11-foot or so, you know, kind of the balconies and then, you know, that 11-foot section at the top? I think those are the types of things that I would, you know, look into because there's kind of 2 approaches, you know, does the addition really want to step back and, you know, kind of be a true addition, which you see that in Fulton Market already? Or is it, you know, that it's a 6-story full expression, you know, kind of on that street wall, which you see examples of that. And, you know, there could be some play with that on, you know, your porosity there for that street wall. But I don't see this as achieving any of those things, you know, right now. I totally understand the value of wanting to kind of create that space up there for that residential, but there's got to be another way, I think, of achieving it.
So are you suggesting that you know, there's more mass to it or just like more sculptural, like, you know, element? You take the balconies out and it's just a framed steel, you know, that's transparent, but it's still, you know, it's still there.
If you were to drop those balconies out and, you know, I don't know where the next, you know, kind of row of columns would be for the rest of the building, but would you need that structural frame, you know, for those upper 2 floors at all at that point?
Well, I mean, the issue is, or I guess kind of one of the important things is that rooftop and the amenity. And there's, you know, it's a potential that this, you know, while it's a retail or office or in residential mixed kind of use building, you know, in that neighborhood, someone could come in and take that whole building and make it into some, you know, something that, I don't know. So, you know, we have an amenity up there that would, you know, have to go away. And it's really, you know, there's 2 stairs in that back section and the elevator. So there's not a whole lot of space up there. What it looks like in that, when you look at Axon, it's a little deceiving. That's only probably 700 or 800 usable square feet up there under that roof. But we have looked at trying to pull back. I did a sun study. There's no sun that comes past about, 12 feet on there, and it's very isolated times of the year because that's the north facade. And those are all things that kind of drove us to this, to this solution. But like anything, we could, keep looking at things and always try to refine it. I mean, that's what we're doing here, so.
I have a question for, I guess, just dialogue. So Commissioner Fair, are you saying that you think that maybe an acceptable approach would be actually, and maybe this is what the conversation was, but to expand the street, just let that not look like balconies up there, but take the street wall all the way up and just go for the mass as a
Yeah, I mean,
versus two different, because right now, I think what gives pause is that it looks like an old, historic structure with a non-conforming addition.
for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like right now, it's like a complete
But it
form.
could be a new construction,
Sure, sure.
but that's a street wall, like working within the guidelines versus looking like an addition to a, non-conforming addition.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page.
Okay.
About damaging the buildings next to it by taking down what remains of the historic structure that isn't visible?
Yes, they're built like common walls, those old, I think this building was there first, from what I remember, looking back. So the two party walls are, integral to each other, on those adjacent buildings. You'd have to, kind of like take them down and build them in sections back. On the sidewalls, the rear wall has to come down, the front, facade's gone at this point. So there's, there are a couple of, the masonry on those two common walls comes through, but we'd have to redo the face brick, obviously.
But that would still bring it back to permits review committee. Even if it was all brand new construction, it's still in a historic district, regardless of whether there's pieces of the original building there or not. I mean, it wouldn't end up sidestepping this commission.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I know, I don't know that I have a solution here, but just kind of addressing the massing at the front. I think what you did is kind of the reverse ends up happening. It's drawing attention to the volume that's there. Like the wall isn't apparent, so you end up with the with the beams and the balconies, and even though it does break it up, it's still what you're noticing is sort of the void of space, which almost acts like existing building because it's because you kind of built the lines around it, which ends up being kind of distracting from what you're doing. And it would stand out as a non-compatible addition, kind of no matter which way you do it, which is concerning. What is the square footage of the two? Is it 2 or 3 residential units in the addition?
It's potentially just one residential unit.
That's all one residential unit?
Yeah.
Okay.
But, we've looked at it both ways, but in the permit, we went in as 2 units, but it potentially is going to be for 1. So it's I don't remember what the net square footage out of is, but it's so it's 40 by 80, so it's 32 minus I think it ends up being maybe a 38 all day without the use of, for the 2 floors.
It's an awful lot of amenities in the Thornton Market District. I don't imagine. I mean, I understand you're trying to make something that's a valuable piece of property, but it seems that looking at that as an entire large house on top of a 4-story building in the district.
Well, the rooftops is common space.
Yeah.
It's not the residence space. It's common for the retailers, for the office.
Okay. Anyone else?
You have additional questions, or we could go public comment and come back to discussion?
It was just more discussion.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like we're trying to talk our way through this, right?
There's no, so we can say no comments. We're in discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, unless.
We're no public comments. There's no public comments. We're in discussion.
You know, our primary responsibility is not so much with the amenities of the building, although we acknowledge and are sensitive to that. And yeah, we know that you all want to make something that's attractive and, you know, it's going to be the type of space that, you know, offers all those sorts of things. I look at this though as, you know, you've got kind of a bit of a puzzle and the pieces are set. And one of the restraints to this puzzle is that attitude towards, you know, those two upper floors. And, you know, one option that's been identified is, you know, at the corners, you know, that are facing, you know, kind of, you know, the main street. Do you build those up so that it reads more of a solid and not kind of a complete foreign add-on that's been dropped on it? Or, you know, are you able to, you know, cut back those balconies and that structure so that, you know, it steps back and you know, reads more in line with, you know, additions to that building? I'd like to see, you know, a solution go in that direction. I think it feels like we're in a little bit of kind of a stalemate right now. And I hear, you know, the restrictions or the challenges that you all, you know, have, but, you know, we're really want to make sure that, you know, we're not, you know, introducing something that is just not in alignment with everything else that's in the district. Even with the example, you know, that you all shared is, you know, what we're trying to push you all towards. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's steel, glass, brick. That's essentially molten and metal, you know, so where it's, I guess what, you know, what I'm reading, what you say, and it's just the use of it is potentially, you know, pushing it in different ways than it's there. But you know, I don't know about that. I feel like it's very deliberate to that neighborhood. You know, it wouldn't be on, you know, probably any other neighborhood.
I think the material palette,
Yeah.
absolutely, in kind. I think the use though, particularly, you know, where we're, you know, not in alignment for, you know, the steel at the upper two floors is the argument that, you know, this is creating a step back effect. We're saying, no, that mass reads, and especially when you've got those balconies and, you know, that concrete balcony that's going to be projecting out, that just reads as a solid mass. Okay. So I think that's where the work is. You can either cut it away and step it all back, but you lose amenities, or do you handle, and, you know, we're saying really at the corners, you know, you've got push and pull you can have at the
Right.
facade up there. But do you make it more solid? And I think, you know, right now it's not solid, obviously.
Right. It's interesting to look at that from that perspective. If you add mass to it and solid to it, does it actually help the, you know, that top two floors? So I think Eamon wants to say he's the owner.
Hi, my name is Eamon Hamid. I'm the owner, and thank you all for taking the time to review this. Thank you, Joyce. I've owned this building a long time. I think John has done a nice job of trying to incorporate what, as your guidelines would say, don't imitate, but kind of come up with a creative and try to blend in, but don't imitate what's there as historic. I feel, you know, a lot in the community feels, that building does just what it's supposed to do in that area. It incorporates the industrial meatpacking look with the steel and the panels and the glass of the district. That district has evolved, and we see buildings now that are very creatively and architecturally beautiful that also fit in the neighborhood. A lot of the new construction buildings are in that design, and it follows the guidelines of saying don't imitate, but kind of complement. And I think the first floors does that, and the addition does that as well. Everybody's saying how heavy or this and that. I think a straight up building would look terrible. I think if I was on the commission, I'd go, I wouldn't want something coming up. I think that that steel that goes up shows the meat packing or the district's, the look of the district, but also lets your eye go through it and doesn't hit your face right with a blank wall. 318 North Carpenter does the same thing. Now, it is a bigger building, bigger footprint, but with the zoning that we're allowed to do this. This is what we got the zoning approved, as Nick said. The amenities, I don't know what the amenities are. Right now, at the moment, it's 2 floors, but it's not a lot of square footage up there. You have 2 large stairwells because you need 2 for safety. There's the elevator bay, and the building to the left of it, which is 1045, if you go back to that picture, is just a big block. That more to the left. Well, one more, I think. The 1045 North Fulton Market. Well, you can kind of see it there. Yeah, that one with a red, well, anyway, if you pull up 1045, there was a picture of it, you could see it. It's just it's a brick wall. It looks like it should be in Schaumburg. So, and nothing against Schaumburg, but that's what it looks like. So I'm trying to make it, that is what the district, that's it right there, the big tall one on the left picture to the far left on the top, kind of like an arrow going to it. You know, and also I heard, the comment about the windows. The bay windows in that building are 24 feet openings. But, and I totally agree with Joyce in respect to, they should have black, that the what's called the image or whatever, the rendering doesn't have the black dividers in the windows, which it will. And so it won't just be that flat piece of glass, that goes across. Once again, that is something that's seen all through the district. It was a 2-bay building when it was built, and now it's a 2-bay building. And that's what I think it should stay. It's not a real wide building, so 40 feet. Three-bay window would make it look like maybe a new school being built somewhere. But yeah, I just want to move forward with it. I don't feel that addition adds anything but a really neat structure to something somebody else down the line, 10, 15, 100 years from now will go, oh my God, that's a really neat piece of architecture. I think John did a nice job of making that, incorporating the elements of it. I totally respect the commission's thoughts but I've gone all through that area, the district, and there's buildings that incorporate all kinds of steel and metal and brick and have changed because it is an innovative area. Every building that they had a line of when the different history of when the project was looked at before. Well, since then, the whole area has changed. The district has changed, it evolved, and I think it adds to and complements exactly what we're trying to do in that district. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Do you wanna-
Oh, and another thing, that building, the only 2 things that are going to stay standing are the 2 side walls, and I don't think the demolition plans were submitted in that packet, but the ground floor, as you walk in, it's concrete, that's going to stay, and the 2 walls. Everything else is gone. It's going to work with, within the, make it, fire, all the different zoning or codes to protective for fire and stuff. It's going to be concrete and steel and inside. So it's all being redone, just the 2 walls on the side. And as I think Nick or somebody mentioned, that is actually one of the recommendations from this committee years ago to not demolish it because we don't want to, damage the 2 buildings to the side that are historic. So thank you very much. Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you. We want to review the conditions and see if there's a path here. I mean, for me, the masonry portion, it's probably okay in the 2-part configuration. And the bulkheads,
I think if I had to maybe point out kind of maybe what the 2 biggest sticking points are, because we've not talked much about just the height. And I know the 2 recommendations don't match what's being proposed, currently. So I see that as kind of one, sticking point and maybe a question for you all. I don't know that I've got the solution in mind just yet, but it's just understanding, um, in terms of any requirements on the height of the building. You know, what restraints are we dealing with there, versus, getting it more, I guess, in alignment with, the district overall, or the immediate context, I should say, because that's what we're dealing with here.
I think the maximum building height for the facade that's along like the property line can be no higher than 66 feet.
Okay.
So that's kind of like the height that we're working with. And that's actually from an approval for another new construction project, which is directly across the street. So this is the subject building here with that exposed steel frame. And then the building across the street here, I believe was approved by the Permit Review Committee, I think in 2021, and that one was at 66 feet.
And the height requirement is at the property line, so the setback can be taller.
Setback can be taller, yeah. But also keep in mind that the floor-to-floor heights for the additions, the floors of the addition have to be comparable to the floor heights of the actual building.
Okay.
Yes, per the guidelines, the design guidelines.
Is this current proposal meeting that 66 feet for the?
Ooh,
They're at 51.
yes, it's
So they're
under
meeting that, so
66
they're
feet.
meeting that.
Yeah. Well, I guess it depends on what you're
Yeah.
considering a setback, right? So we're kind of
So that
back
makes
at that, like,
Right.
yeah. But the 4 stories, meets that. But I still, there's obviously the issue then of the floor-to-floor height for, the 2 other floors. So, I think that from my standpoint, that has got to be included, in what we would, kind of recommend from here moving forward is how do you adjust those to the floor to ceiling height of the 5th and 6th floors to be in alignment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the 5th and 6th floors, I believe, are about like 15 foot 6 inches and for floor to floor heights, whereas the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors are 12 feet floor to floor.
Yeah, floor to floor. So I think that's the first thing I would say is, getting the 5th and 6th floors, floor to, ceiling height in alignment with the 1st through 4th floors. Yes, while also meeting the overall building height requirements for the, the street. So, which was 66 feet. So they're doing that technically already. Unless they change the design, further on and it all becomes a single wall at the front, at the property line, I should say. That makes sense.
The 66 feet, is that would bringing well, I guess what's the 6-story? If we look at the 6-story height, what's that currently?
82 feet, or really 84 feet to the top of the parapet.
So that's quite a bit of reduction. Is that to the penthouse or to the?
The penthouse is 94 feet, but the penthouse is, setback.
Setback.
So what we're talking about in terms of the height, is connected to the design of the building, right? So, our feeling has been that those balconies, those 4 columns, all read as a mass that's contributing to the street wall. So I think that's kind of getting to the next part of, what, the recommendation, what I would, say is, that has to be revisited to, either be redesigned as a full setback. So, does that 11 feet, get chopped and, you rearrange the amenities as such? Or if the entire, that street wall reads more consistent, for the entire 6 floors, then you've got a question of how do you adjust the entire floor to ceiling height for the building to get within that 66 foot, overall height, which I don't think, would make anybody too excited on how you now kind of squish 6 floors into 66 feet.
Commissioner Ponce.
Yeah, I'm just going to add to what's being said. I think that you could be one, maybe two iterations away from that, from the 5th and 6th floor, making a more subtle transition, because it's just so, it's very prominent, the balconies and the structure. And, you know, I understand what you're trying to do, right? And introduce a modern element to the building. But the transition, I think that's what's, it's just, it's hard to accept what's going on there. If we can just look at how that transition happens from the 4th to the 5th to the 6th and to the penthouse, I think that you're almost there. The four stories have that character of the district. It doesn't compare to the other building that you pointed out, where it is just more of like a wall. But I believe there's a way that you can may be able to keep your amenities, but just a more subtle transition, so that, you know, what the staff recommends is a good start.
Okay, understood. And there's some, you know, just, I know you're talking about the heights and stuff, and so it's a little misleading, as I kind of mentioned, there's some interstitial space on the roof deck that kind of looks like it's another 4 feet higher, but, you know, there, I mean, is there a couple feet? Obviously, that's an easy one, probably. So, you know.
Is the commission, sorry about that, start singing. Are you, I heard, are you saying to bring up the sides and leave the front like it is? I'm open to doing that. I'm not looking to do anything that doesn't want, I think you might have suggested strengthening up the sides so they go straight up. I'm fine with that. Bring that forward. That's fine. And that way, if you feel like that doesn't, I'd be more than happy to do that. I mean, I'm working with the architect and see if he's okay with that, but there is a building at 318 North Carpenter that kind of says just what you did, that's just as tall as this, that sits next to a 2-story historic building, right abuts to it, and does exactly what that does, except for it does take the recommendation of putting up the sides, you know, taking the sides straight up and leaving the front open. And
Yeah.
it's 318 North Carpenter.
And I mean, I don't even think it has to be solid, right? It just, something needs to happen, and it's also quite prominent, the structure, those columns break away from the rhythm of the 1st and 4th floor. So there's something different happening if that rhythm continues.
Yeah, if we could look at that as a solution, I can work with the architect and then, or let him work on it. I think that's a very neat, good solution as well. And especially if it can be some kind of material that isn't just solid as it would be, you know, like windows or something like that. Yeah.
Commissioner Ponce, are you saying that you're extending masonry up, just to be
Yeah,
clear?
that's even better. A brick
Yeah.
column, yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like
It's
that.
it's a subtle transition of, you know, something needs to happen between the masonry and what's happening with the glass, you know, but it's just very abrupt, that 4th, you know, from 4th to 5th, it's just very different language.
Yeah.
Commissioner Fair.
More so talking to you all, I think we're on the same page. You're referring to the 318 Carpenter, because that's what I've been speaking to this time about, you know, bringing up, you know, the corners, if you will, you know, similar in style to 318 Carpenter. So I think we're on the same page in that regard, and that could be a solution. I would then warn, you know, the proportions then, because, you know, when you look at 318 Carpenter as an example, you know, the way that the columns are there, they all align. And right now, those columns that are, kind of set inward or wherever you're going to kind of draw the line, I mean, right now, it's not even dropping right in the middle, it looks, of
Yeah,
the
they're
two bays.
because of the, surround, it's this true structure coming up. But
So
yeah,
I-
so it's not flush or, it's true, but
So, I heard in one sense that, all the structure's going away. But so I think, some clarity on, what's staying and what's going. If it's all going and it's all being kind of rebuilt, it seems like there's an opportunity to get that alignment a little bit more intentional. And
Yeah.
I think that's what we would definitely want to see. Because if you just infill what you've got right now, it's, it wouldn't be aligned and it wouldn't have symmetry.
318 building is a lot wider footprint, and that's why those columns are able to do that. I think I'm having a better understanding what you guys are suggesting. The brick column coming up the top on two sides, going from there to the top, that kind of reinforce those corners. I think that's a good idea, and I like that idea, so if that's what, I think that's, they're kind of explaining to me what you guys are saying, but those columns that are going 10 feet in, those are literally 10 to 12 feet in from the corners. That's a structural element because the way the building sits with that center column coming up in the middle of the other 4 stories. It can't be right on the middle of it. It has to be distributed, and that's per the structural engineer.
Okay. I think the execution of how that's done is something we would, definitely want, if not us, the staff to be able to review. That we will see. So, what's that?
So Commissioner Ferry, maybe you
I'm always happy to volunteer.
volunteer some of your, opinion on some refinement as they come along too, so that you can explore this further and we could do this at the staff level versus going back to commission.
Okay. Who wants to try to summarize that? That's a succinct recommendation.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
I will attempt, and you could correct me, please. So we need to modify the staff recommendations. The project does not need to come back to Pierce, but there will need to be some adjustments to the design that would be reviewed in consultation with Commissioner Fair as soon as possible so that there's no delay in your permit process. The condition number 2, I'll just start there. It seems like that condition is eliminated entirely, as well as condition number 3. I think material samples is a standard process, so there's nothing wrong with that one, right? That remains. I think that the decision on the cladding materials is going away, number 5. I understood that the rooftop railings will be addressed, so they're not visible, so that condition stays. So we go back to condition number 1. It's really just to modify the addition or the 5th and 6th floor proportions and corners and understanding of how it holds the front property wall, the street wall, and modifying the design to address that. I think the condition about the heights is going to be to see what level of reduction could be possible. It may not be going down to the 12-foot that is part of the 2nd to 4th floor, but it could be just something in between what's proposed and that. And the revised design should be submitted through staff, and we will incorporate Commissioner Fair in the review of the final project.
Great.
Does that summarize it?
Yeah, that was
All
good.
right.
Thank you, Deanna.
Thank you so much, Deanna.
thank you. Thanks for your time.
We have a revised motion on the table.
So moved.
Okay, so moved. Commissioner Fair has made a motion to the revised staff recommendations as Deanna had outlined them. Do we have a second? Ooh. Seconded by Commissioner Blakely. Commissioner Rubin says yes, and Commissioner Ponce. He is a yes, and I'm a yes, and the motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Joyce.
Okay. Our final project, item number 5 is 908 West Armitage in the 43rd Ward. Alderman Knudsen again, Armitage Halsted District. The proposed modification of 2 masonry openings on first floor of front facade and painting of the front facade masonry. And I'd like to call on Emily Barton for the staff report.
Yes, thank you. So, the subject property is a 2.5-story masonry workers' cottage, mid-block between Bissell Street and Fremont Street. Workers' cottages were historically entirely residential, and for this building, the top 2 floors are still occupied as a residence, but the first floor has been converted to commercial use. The new tenant for the space reached out to staff about desired modifications to the front facade in order to increase visibility for their new store. The building is a typical example of a masonry workers' cottage, commonly found throughout the district. Per the designation report, several buildings, including the district's oldest buildings dated from 1870s and early 1880s, were built as small-scale residential buildings, predominantly cottages and 2 and 3 flats. Built during the immediate period of post-Chicago fire reconstruction and expansion, some are constructed of wood, while other examples are built of brick. While no permit was found for the subject building, it exhibits all the modest characteristics of a workers' cottage built between 1875 and 1880. It is listed as potentially contributing in the report's building catalog, but this is likely due to a 3rd-floor addition that was added to the building in 2002, predating the designation. Although the original double-hung windows have been replaced, the historic masonry openings have all been retained, and besides the rooftop addition, staff feels the building maintains a high level of historic integrity. The front facade features typical residential style punched masonry openings with 3 bays that align on all floors. This is common condition within the district, with similar window groupings found at 1018 West Armitage and 952 West Armitage, among many others. The original double-hung windows were replaced sometime in the past with aluminum windows that do not match the proportions or operation of the original. The applicant would like to merge the 2 windows adjacent to the door on the raised first floor to create one large storefront window to increase visibility for the retail store. This would involve the removal of the historic masonry in between the windows and also the original sills and headers. Although many buildings within the district have storefronts, they are store and flat type buildings, which historically featured large glass storefronts in the first floor retail spaces, with more typical punched masonry openings on the residential levels above. There are also examples in the district of residential buildings that had additions built to the front for commercial use, but these alterations were all made prior to district designation. The applicant has included several examples of these in the submission that you received last week. This building in particular was historically residential in use, and while some residential buildings were designed with wider first floor windows, such as you can see at 918 West Armitage, which aligns all the way up with the residential windows historically, the subject property always featured 3 bays of single double-hung windows. Enlarging the masonry opening detracts from the original character of the cottage and would involve the removal of historic fabric, including the decorative carved lintels. Staff recommends that the proposed modification would be an adverse effect to the building, and the historic masonry opening should remain. Typically, when windows are being replaced, any new windows need to meet historic preservation guidelines and reintroduce the original configuration if inappropriately modified in the past. In this case, because the existing windows are not historic and the majority of the windows are proposed to remain, staff recommend that the 2 first-floor windows may be replaced with fixed picture windows in order to increase visibility. As part of the applicant's initial submission in September of last year, they also requested to paint the historic masonry in black paint. That same month, staff told the applicant that painting the masonry was not appropriate and could not be approved by the commission. While preparing the staff analysis for this report, it was discovered that the building had been painted without a permit or commission approval in September of last year anyway. It's not clear if this was immediately before or after initial staff feedback. According to the City of Chicago Building Code, a permit is required for any work that affects the exterior or designated interior elements of a Chicago landmark. For the property owner, they did not know that approval was required to paint the building when they did it in September. They thought they could paint the masonry because there are other buildings in the district that have had their masonry painted. The paint that was used was Faro and Ball exterior masonry paint. The Commission's guidelines address this pretty explicitly. Masonry buildings should not be painted, aside from the fact that historically they were rarely painted. Painting a masonry building creates a continuing maintenance problem. Painting seals and otherwise porous material, trapping moisture in the masonry. Once painted, periodic repainting is then required. Brick and mortar are porous materials that absorb liquid and water vapor from precipitation. When left unpainted, this moisture evaporates naturally from the surface of the brick and through soft mortar joints. However, when brick and mortar are painted, moisture is trapped inside the wall. When this happens, freeze-thaw cycles can cause irreversible damage to the brick as the expanding ice microscopically breaks down the masonry. Painted brick may begin to spall and leading to brick replacement being necessary. Also included in your packet for reference was an excerpt from the National Park Service Preservation Brief, which also additionally outlines various concerns with painting masonry. Based off of photos, the original masonry appeared to be in sound condition. Although the paint used on the masonry in this case claims to be highly breathable, it is still a paint and inappropriate for the building. As I mentioned, there are buildings within the district with painted masonry. Some of these likely predated district designation, but after Commission Review Authority commenced in 2002, none of these paint applications were permitted or approved by staff. Here you can see just a couple of examples where you can see these buildings are currently experiencing the condition issues associated with painting of masonry. So staff recommend that the paint recently applied without a permit on the front facade masonry shall be removed by a qualified masonry restoration contractor pursuant to a permit. The contractor shall submit paint removal specifications to historic preservation staff and prepare cleaning test sample areas on the facade for historic preservation staff review prior to permit approval. And then with the condition that I mentioned previously, that the 2 first floor masonry window openings should be retained. Alderman Knutson and the Sheffield Neighbors Association are aware of the proposal. Emails of opposition from the Sheffield Neighbors Association have been included in your packet, and the 43rd Ward defers to staff recommendations. So I'm here if you have any questions. I believe also the property owner, tenant, and architect are here for that.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Questions, any questions, commissioners, to Emily?
In our in our packet, we saw some images of signage on the building. Is that not something we're discussing today?
It's something that can be generally approved at the staff level. It's a small sign that, you know, it fits within guidelines. We would have it be attached to mortar joints, and then, you know, vinyl graphics, especially such small ones in the windows, would be fine too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, commissioners? Hearing none, let's hear from the project architect, I suppose.
Excuse me. Do you mind if I go first? I'm the tenant.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Just introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. My name is Brenda Mansour, and I am the head of retail expansion for Toast, the tenant that is at 908 Armitage. I know that you may not be familiar with the brand, so just wanted to let you know that we were established in the 90s in the UK, and opening in Chicago is a big part of our retail expansion strategy in the US. We're planning to open 20 locations. We have 6 for New York, 2 elsewhere in the US, and we have 7 more doors opening this year. Toast is the mission of Toast is to make thoughtfully crafted clothing and objects that are classic and stand the test of time. We also produce events in our stores and demonstrations for customers to learn about craft and handiwork. So creating a brand experience that is visible and that will translate to a customer is very important for us, especially as we see Chicago as a very important market for our growth and for the health of our overall business. Our stores typically do inhabit historic buildings, both in the UK and in the US. In the West Village, we have a space that's from the 1800s. I know the store would be about 100 years old. This building was built in 1917. And we actually seek out historic buildings to inhabit because we want to retain them and respect them and honor them. And we felt that in this submittal that our primary objective to improve the visibility from the street to the storefront was well balanced with the design of the building. We maintained the lintels and overall tried to create a more historic appearing facade versus imposing a completely modern window system, which could have been possible. We do have a 10-year commitment to the space, and we do think that the location would be extremely successful if it was able to be presented in a manner that is consistent with a commercial space. We were looking at other examples on the block, and we felt that this solution would be acceptable when we signed the lease and accepted the property as it was. And we now understand that the building itself, because it was constructed as a residence primarily and not as mixed use, that it was an issue. So we're here to address that with you. But however, since it is in the midst of a business district and the space itself is zoned for mercantile use, we're hoping that the Landmark Commission would understand or potentially have some, make some provisions for the fact that we are a business and that we were trying to have a commercially successful endeavor in the space. You know, Chicago is undoubtedly the cultural and business center of the Midwest, and as a globally recognized brand, having a space in Chicago is also very important to us. And we are hoping that following the success of this site that will open a second door. We have 20 stores planned in the US, and we are hoping to open a second door in Chicago, likely in Fulton Market or Oak Street, depending on where we find a space. But really, this is the one that's going to prove concept for us, and coming in with a strong footing is really important. Did you guys have any questions about Toast or about what I just said?
You had stores in New York. Where did you say the those locations are?
Yeah, we have stores in Brooklyn, in Boerum Hill, Nolita on Elizabeth and Houston, if you're familiar with the area, West Village on West 4th Street, and then the Upper East Side in a co-op building that's built from like the early 1900s, Art Deco building.
Are they all historic districts?
What was that?
Are they all in historic districts? And did you have to go?
They're in
through a
historic
process?
districts. They're not in landmark districts, but they're in historic districts. So they did not have to go through the same filing process. But the facades were filed in West Village with landmarks actually. So sorry, it was filed with landmarks, but since it wasn't a landmark building, we were able to make adjustments and modify the space as needed.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, commissioners? All right, seeing none.
I would also like to have the landlord speak too, if that's okay.
Sure.
Hi, guys. How are you? I'm the
Afternoon.
landlord of 908 Armitage. My other partner on the deal, there's two of us that own the building, Sumit Gupta. He couldn't be here today. My name is Zachary Kupkovic. I'm a big fan of all your work. So I want to start by saying, Emily, Deanna, we're very thankful for the great work that you guys have done. It's a very thoughtful report. I'm here really, you know, we painted the building. So I want you guys to understand Toast had nothing to do with that. It was part of the landlord work. Sumit and I, we really, I mean, it's kind of been a mess for us. I really wish we hadn't painted the building for obvious reasons. You know, we're going to probably have to spend some money to fix it and deal with it and stuff. And we're not here to be a bad actor. The truth is we both live in the neighborhood. We own this building. We bought it together 3 years ago. We always thought we could paint it, basically because there's 10 other buildings painted on Halsted and Armitage. My first PRC meeting, so I'm sorry I didn't send the proper exhibit, but I do have an exhibit that's printed out. I don't know if you guys saw it. I don't know the exact protocol, but it's really an example of it's 10 to 15 different projects on Halsted, on Armitage, all retail, for the most part, all retail, of buildings that are painted. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that was our reasoning behind the reason we did it. The other reason we did it, and we did it very quickly, and in fact, we did it before the lease was even signed with Toast. So I want to make it very clear that this was our decision to make, not something that they forced on us. It was landlord work, and we did it quickly, literally before the lease was signed, because you can't paint exterior at all unless it's under 50 degrees. We did it in September, and we had a window where the weather was nice, so we took it and we painted it. It's regrettable we did it. That's a long story short. So why am I here? Okay, so like number one, it's my building. I want to know what's going on with it. I want to be a part of the discussion. Number two, the real reason I'm here is to support my tenant. So Toast is a great brand. They're based out of the UK. They're in expansion mode in the US. They're opening 20 stores in the US. Renda flew here from New York last night. She's here for a day trip just for this meeting to make this argument. So my point would be the window, we're talking about the paint in the windows, and the paint, I understand. Like, I understand. It was a mistake to do it. It was a regrettable decision. It's something we're committed to figuring out with you all, of course. The window, we're talking about a retail district on Armitage that's become exceedingly high street. And in particular, over the last 10 years, you've seen rents really explode in this area because it's become very boutique, very niche, high street retail. I remember my mom telling me this a very, very long time ago, that retail is a theater. It's something I always remembered. And in retail, you have to get everything right. So that might mean getting the window right, or getting the paint color right, and expressing your brand in a way, that really resonates with your clientele. So I would just ask that the commission considers the windows and considers the fact that this could really affect their success in this location. And I really mean that. Just being able to see into a space and being able to see what's inside, and showing off their merchandise in the best way possible really, really impacts retail. I think we all kind of know that to a certain degree. And I do think there's a good handful of examples on Armitage Street, on Halsted Street, within the landmark zone, where windows have been expanded. So I do understand the reasonings. I understand and appreciate Emily's extremely thoughtful work here. But I do wish that the commission would consider the window opening especially, and consider the paint color, because it's such a representation of Toast brand, and we want them to succeed. We want commercial businesses to succeed in Lincoln Park. We want them to succeed in Chicago. And, as a landlord, I want to see them succeed. They've made a 10-year commitment to this project. They're very committed to the neighborhood, committed to Chicago. And, I'll say my piece. So I'm here to support my tenant. Renda's done an amazing job. She's worked through the city. She's really tried to do everything the right way. We painted the building, and we could have gone into permit and said, okay, we're just going to do interior work, or we could have just asked for the windows, but we wanted to do it the right way. So we went in, we said, we're going to include the paint color, even though we had already done it. We could have taken that risk, and we chose not to, right? Because we wanted to do it the right way. We're owning that mistake. And, I just want to ask the commission to consider the window, consider the paint, and we're here to respect your decision. But, I did feel that I wanted to, stand up for my tenant, support Renda, who came in from New York, and support them as a business and their commitment that they've made to Chicago. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for giving us all that background. Commissioners, there's, any questions? I believe there's no one signed to speak on this item. Because you both had signed up. Any questions? Emily, has the commission or PRC ever approved a modification of a window configuration in a historic district or on a historic building?
Yeah, it has been done before. I could not find any examples in this district specifically. Deanna?
One that comes to mind is the Medina Temple, when it changed to a furniture store. There was an alteration to lower the sill heights. So we've also looked at certain alterations of a window to a door when it's needed for a retail
right.
entrance, those types of situations, more to lower the sill height and increase the height that way to my memory.
I have maybe a question to staff for removing the paint. The masonry seems more straightforward in my mind, but then things like the cornice, obviously that's a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, elements that were historically painted,
Fine.
are
Okay,
are
so it's
fine.
really just the
Yeah.
masonry. Got it.
Doors, windows, those can remain black.
Okay, that's very helpful.
In your,
Is that all right?
Sure.
I want to confirm, so like if we are to take the paint off and, I think the permit is contingent on it, my question would be, it's very cold right now, obviously it's in Chicago, like it might take time for us to be able to do that before like the weather turns. And we really want Toast to be able to start their work. So I just want to confirm in terms of like the permit timing and their ability to start work, like if we could kind of manage that, or maybe that's a follow-up conversation with staff, but just understanding exactly like the process of, getting the permit, starting work, and how that relates to any questions about the masonry.
The removal of paint would actually be an environmental permit. So just so that it's a separate process anyway.
I wouldn't want it to stop their ability to at least start construction on their work or their interior work.
Yeah, if there's like a cure period, perhaps where we have a year to comply, or else there's another violation or fine or something of the sort.
I am comfortable with that. Yeah. We would be comfortable with allowing some period there, for that work to happen. Well, we can put that in the conditions so we could vote on it. Right. All right, and one more thing, I was curious, I didn't see when we reviewed the conditions, I didn't see anything about, or was it in there that we're voting on whether we would approve an enlargement of the? Okay,
Yeah,
I was just
that's
saying,
the-
that. Okay.
I believe condition 1.
Yeah. I am just curious to open that up to the commission, and I obviously don't want to do anything that would, put us in a bad position later with precedent. But in a district that is sort of trending, to in this street where there is this retail activity, I don't think that I have a hard time. This is maybe very controversial, but to allow the district to evolve, is what the storefront potentially does. And I think it's within us, within a boundary of the windows above. So for me, it's like I'm sort of tempted to say that maybe that would be okay, but I would love to hear from others.
If the district doesn't have examples of a window modification like this, but the building type does in other historic districts, is that something that's been explored yet, or that just would be more research as to kind of what the precedent would be in similar buildings?
I mean, it would need, none come to mind
Okay.
at all. It's pretty much, as Deanna said, it's been lowering of sills to, as opposed to widening.
Or using like an existing opening and turning it into a window rather than just cutting a brand new one.
I do have to say that there might be some examples of some alterations to the basement level windows, though, not the first, second floor, but the lower level.
With the understanding that just they're more out of view, or why would we treat it differently? No, it's okay. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
Sometimes it can be light and vent requirements too. There needs to be a modification to the size if there's going to be, an ADU down there or something.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
I remember us months ago, we looked at one. I don't think it was a worker's cottage, but I think we made a exception for a modification for it was like an accessible entry or something like that.
Yeah.
That seems reasonable. I do struggle with this being a worker's cottage, and I do think allowing the picture windows is a step in the right direction. I mean, when I look at the proposed elevation on the right, I mean, it fundamentally is just something else now. If we had an example of a worker's cottage that we could point to, where this type of modification had been made, I think I'd be more open to that. And even if it was a conversation of increasing the height, maybe, if a new datum were found to say align with the top of the stairs, that might be something, but I'm hesitant about what it means to open that up. And similar to the discussion that we had about the Fulton Market, we got this puzzle again, right? And there's certain pieces that are in place, and you don't have that additional 8 square feet of window space. But what are other ways that we can get creative? I mean, there is a large sign that looks like it's right in front of it, kind of on that property. I wonder what are different ways that the existing architecture can be leveraged. I don't know if there's lighting. Is there some type of display that you do at the interior that doesn't impact permanently that exterior? But I mean, I encourage the other commissioners, you can convince me otherwise, but I have a hard time initially going that way.
Well, I mean, I just want to say, I mean, the function of it is retail, and I think we all have the experience of walking down the street and shopping, window shopping, literally, and looking into a window, seeing something that you like and walking in. There's no better marketing, and there's no better way of drawing the customer in. And any kind of display that we would put in the windows would be minimized and diminished by the existence of a brick, center. So I hear what you're saying, and I understand that it is a worker's cottage and that, it was built to be a residence, but now that it's, the life it's living now in this day is one of a retail space. And, to the comment that was made earlier, we did keep the window scale in scale with the other 2 windows on top so that there's a linear kind of reference with your eye. It's not an imposition of, a super modern aesthetic. We're not even a very modern brand to begin with. And this was our way of thinking of what this building could look like now in this day and age, while still respecting its past.
I'd like to hear from other commissioners. Yes.
Yeah,
Mr.
I
Ponte.
can add to that. And I'm leaning towards, I agree with Commissioner Fair because it is changing the character of the architecture. And to me, I mean, the reputation of your brand is also immensely helpful to bring that traffic in. And whether this is a long-term lease or whatever, what does it mean in long-term? And that precedent that you bring up. The architecture, obviously you pick this building, this location very intentionally, very carefully. I can't imagine that, it wasn't a well thought out process.
No, I mean, it was well thought out. I think that because of the existence of the other painted structures on the block and the way that so many window storefront systems have been modified, we were under the impression that it would be approved, and that there had been some conversation about the process with landmarks before. So, we came into the deal and with the assumption that we would be able to open the windows based on what was visibly available to us to compare it to.
Would it help, and I know this is not what you're proposing, but would it help to get more length in the windows at all? To lower the sill if you had to stick with the configuration of the worker's cottage that it is?
I think this is something that maybe Austin can help with, but I believe that the more glass would be helpful, but I think that the way the windowsill is built, that it's not that much more space, right?
I am Austin registered representing DXU Architects here. Obviously, yeah, a little bit more storefront in any case, going down to the floor would be helpful for visibility. But again, if we're modifying the exterior masonry, we really don't want to touch much of that sill. We would have to replace the lintel and the decorative lintel, what reads as, say, masonry. You know, we would want to keep that character. We kind of drawn it graphically there to keep in mind. It's not unlike what's already above the existing two entry doors there. So that's kind of the intent there, is to keep the lintel as is, give the middle bay some visibility. That will really help with visibility because, you know, we got a lot of store fixtures in there that you're going to want to see from the middle bay there. Brenda, I don't know if extending the storefront windows down all the way to the floor would get us anything, but I do think that middle bay, if we're going to push for anything, that would be something that I would recommend you guys consider.
Okay.
May I? The other thing I would mention is, you know, a lot of the retail spaces, you really don't want to walk upstairs. Okay, so this was a challenging space to lease, frankly, because of the stairs, because most retailers don't want to go up a flight of stairs. So it makes it a bit more challenging, and especially being a little bit higher up, it can be harder to see inside the space. So part of the idea of adding the picture frame window was making the retail space a little better and a little bit more, you know, normal, I guess, with the rest of the block. And especially because of the consideration of the stairs, which makes it a little bit more challenging for retail space, for sure.
Okay, thank you. Back to final discussion, commissioners. Or we can, is there any other final discussion or points? We see the recommendations. Okay.
I mean, my position's not changed too much. I mean, I do hear, you know, the desires for this to best provide, you know, the visibility for the commercial function. You know, the viewpoint and horizon, though, of this commission, though, is it's always inherently been beyond, you know, the tenants, you know, and a modification like this, I think sets a precedent where, you know, a tenant would have, you know, respectively, you know, good reasoning in many situations to make modifications. And, you know, to me, this just kind of opens the door where, you know, we would be bending, you know, kind of the guidance that we have. So I don't have any comfort with it. I do hear you all out on the points that you're making. I do think, you know, the fact that you're looking up to kind of this elevated first floor, there could be some value to, you know, extending that window down, you know, I imagine if I were in your shoes, you know, the floor space that you're getting to kind of frame a view to your merchandises, you know, maybe a mannequin or so, and maybe that's the approach, is, you know, you're trying to really kind of frame that view to whatever the specific, you know, merchandise or styling that's there. And then, you know, within the building itself, you know, I would, you know, encourage you all to explore what can be done at the interior to try to draw eyes. I mean, I understand it's a challenge to, you know, compete and make sure you're getting your merchandise displayed, but making a permanent, you know, kind of modification to the architecture of the building, and one that would set a precedent for the rest of the district, is something that I just couldn't see myself getting behind.
Okay.
So-
Any other final points, commissioners?
I might also add one thing that, I mean, the timing is interesting. Mr. Ward Miller over here would probably agree that, you know, Chicago has been looking at its stock of workers' cottages lately, and unfortunately, we've been losing them left and right, and, you know, to all kinds of modifications. So this is something that's very much like in the, you know, in the zeitgeist in Chicago, is this particular building type. I have no doubt that Toast would be very successful here. It's a gorgeous building. And having a precedent where you're going into historic neighborhoods and bringing your brand in there, I think, is a super cool thing to be doing. But I also could imagine, I mean, I'm gonna say that I'm gonna land on the same place, right? I don't like to see, I want to see the stewardship of this building continue. I hope Toast is there for 100 years, but for the next 100 years, should you leave the building, I'd want to see it. I'd want to see it in its form, but I think to be able to say you're expanding your brand, you're coming into Chicago and valuing this workers' cottage type, which is an endangered type, and that's important to the brand, and it's something that you want to preserve. And maybe it created some challenges in terms of display, but it's still a commitment that you wanted to make. Is going to look so good in Chicago right now, and draw a lot of good attention to the brand. And so I know it's a compromise. I'm trying to look at the kind of the bigger picture of this particular moment. The precedent that we'd set as commissioners for what's happening to this type, but I think in an odd way you could leverage it and get a lot of good faith. Just something to consider.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubin.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And we do love a good story, and the story of preserving the historic features of this building. But so is lengthening the windows a possibility then? That's what we're
I
considering?
think that I would like to add that as a condition if you're, yeah, we could bring those still
Comfortable with
down.
I like it too.
Okay, I think that's good. Thanks.
So I'd make a motion to accept the staff recommendations with the added recommendation that the windows can be extended in height with.
At the
should-
sill.
Seals lower, yeah. So keeping that lintel in place at the top, your flex is really down to lower the sill.
And also the adjustment to the paint, just giving a
Yeah,
grace period.
correct.
1 year?
Sure. Yeah. So a full year.
Okay.
Remove the paint.
Okay, motion is on the table. Seconded by Commissioner Ponce. Let's do the roll call. Commissioner Rubin is a yes. Commissioner Blakely, a yes. And I'm a yes. And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for the conversation from everybody.
Thank you, commissioners.
We have no more items on our agenda. There's no further business. I'd like to request a motion to adjourn. So move, Commissioner Fair. Seconded? Seconded, Commissioner Blakely. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.